Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today I'm just gonna have a bit of a ramble about what I've been reading recently. I haven't finished much. I think as I was saying in my last video, I've been kind of stretching my reading out a bit. I suppose that there've been a couple of group reads and buddy reads that I'm a part of this month. I'm reading quite a few fairly chunky books and got quite a lot of books that are sort of bitty, that are made up of lots of little parts, which means I'm doing lots of sort of jumping from one book to the other and less of just sitting down with one nice big book and slowly making my way through it. But I finished one book, so I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I'm in the middle of. So the one book that I finished is a book I've been dipping in and out of over the last couple of months, and that's this. This is the first volume of Bell's English Poets. It's an anthology of poetry, and this is the first one consisting of early ballads, and it's really quite nice. I enjoyed it. I suppose the ballad form, although there is a fair bit of variety in here, is it can get a bit tedious over time, I suppose, with so much repetition. But a lot of them are really fascinating and can be quite funny. I think my favourite one is actually the first one in here. It's the one I still find the most memorable, which is called London Lackpenny, about a man who's sort of been swindled out of, I think out of his estate or out of something like that, and he's looking for a lawyer in London, and it's just this little tongue-in-cheek sort of satire really on how you can't really get anything done in London unless you've got lots of money, basically. And I think that sort of originated in the sort of latter Middle Ages, I think. So it's funny to see how some things don't change. And yeah, there are some great Robin Hood ballads, which I think I talked about at the beginning of the month, and then really going on a little later on, and I haven't been annotating or sort of usually in an anthology or an essay collection or something like that, I'll be putting a little asterisk next to the titles in the table of contents, so I know which one stood out to me. But I haven't been doing that in this because I just couldn't do it to a nice old book like this. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that I enjoyed. That there was one on the death of King Arthur, which I really quite liked. And there is just something, it describes, let's get it up and I'll read the last few stanzas of it, because I quite enjoyed it. Where was it? Page 108. Yeah, here we go. King Arthur's death. Essentially, King Arthur has been in battle with some sort of rebel knights led by Mordred, and he kills Mordred with his spear, but in the struggle, Mordred also wounds Arthur. So Arthur retreats with one of his knights. Well, most of his knights have all been killed, but it's called Sir Lucan, and they go off to the lake, and Arthur instructs Sir Lucan to throw his sword, which we call it Excalibur, but in this it had a slightly different name. What was it called in this? Is it going to be too... It was similar but not quite the same, the name of his sword. Yeah, I'm not going to find it now. But anyway, he tells him to throw it in, and 2 times he pretends to. The first time he just doesn't do anything, comes back and says he does it, that he's done as he's been told, and Arthur knows he's lying and tells him to go do it again. The second time he pulls the sword from the scabbard and throws the scabbard into the lake, and again Arthur knows he's lying and tells him to go do it again. And so the third time he does do it, and I will I'll describe what he does the last time. The Duke, all shent with this rebuke, no answer made unto the king, but to the river took the sword, and threw it far as he could fling. A hand and an arm did meet the sword, and flourished 3 times in the air, then sunk beneath the running stream, and of the Duke was seen no more. All sore astonished stood the Duke, he stood as still mote be, then hastened back to tell the king, but he was gone from under the tree. But to that place he could not tell, for never after did him spy. But he saw a barge go from the land, and he heard ladies howl and cry, and whether the king was there or not he never knew, nor ever could. For from that sad and direful day he never more was seen on mould, or on earth. I just love that haunting ending. There seems to be a bit of confusion as to who's being talked about at which bit. I think the Duke is mostly is Sir Lucan, and so I'm getting the impression that Sir Lucan is also not seen again after this event. Yeah, I love the ambiguity of it, the fact that it may have been Arthur going off into the water, which is a sort of nod of the hat that he does, and he's taken off into fairyland, and there he's healed and he's still alive and will come back one day. But it doesn't totally go on to say that it might just be some other person's boat, and I mean, lots of people have just died in a battle, so there's plenty of reason for women to be crying. But yeah, just the mystery and the uncertainty of the end of that ballad I really loved. And I've always thought the image of the Lady of the Lake and the hand coming out of the water to catch the sword is just really cool. So I loved reading that. And so it was fun. Some ups and some downs. But it was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, onto the books I'm currently reading at the moment. One of the group reads, or really the group read that I'm in the middle of at the moment, is a group read of a book of poetry that I've attempted before, and I got a good deal of the way in. I think I'm at around the point where I stopped last time. But at the time, I just felt I was getting nothing out of them. They were too elusive, and yeah, I just wasn't finding a way to connect at all with the poems. And they were the dream songs of John Berryman, the first 77 of them. And there's a great group on Voxer where we're reading them, yeah, it's just a great ragtag group of people with channels, people without channels, and we're all reading these poems, and a few people in there are quite familiar with Berryman, and it's just been wonderful to get this. I mean, just so many different readings of the poems, and then some people with a fair bit of expertise, just grounding our reading and giving a way to focus in and actually get something out of the poems. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been annotating, which is not something I always do with poems, but just particularly with his style, he does some odd things. There are often little gaps in there, and and just certain matters of word choice or with just how a sentence is structured, as a way for me to try and work out exactly what's going on with that. I ask questions, and I just ask, why is this like this? Why have you said this instead of writing it like this, and so on. And that's been really helping me get at least a bit more out of them. And I think my favourite way to annotate is to question the book, to have this kind of back and forth with it. And often through writing the question, I get an answer, or I at least get a bit closer towards an answer. So it's been a lot of fun. The poems are dark. They are about his guilt, and about his childhood traumas and his instability and his fraught relationships, but not head on, really. As it says here, it's dream songs, and so it's all done sort of diagonally through these exaggerated dreams, or through elusive language, through imagined conversations, through really odd imagery sometimes, and yet sometimes there's a real poignancy and vulnerability to the poems as well, despite that. And so I don't know, I wouldn't be able to do a good job of reading a Berryman poem, I don't think. But I've been enjoying getting a little deeper into them, and have really enjoyed being part of that group. So we've still got a couple of weeks to go. It'll see us through to the first week of July, the sort of schedule that we've got. But it's been a lot of fun. And then I've been doing a buddy read with Richard from History Lit, and I've been trying my best to hold back on this, because this is the one novel out of everything that I've been reading recently, and when I'm reading it, it really is the only thing that I want to be reading, and so I've been trying to hold back a bit, and sometimes I just leave it for a few days or about a week, and then I read something else instead. So it's really good. But the book in question is Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, and it's a big, sprawling novel about the battle of, well, the sort of centre of the book is the Battle of Stalingrad. So there are a few characters in here who are soldiers in Stalingrad, and then we get there's the whole cast of characters spread out across Russia and across Europe, and it's about people coming to terms with themselves in the face of war, of the Holocaust, of inhumanity, and working out who they are. And sometimes they're working it out at home in a fraught family dynamic. They may be working it out in the front lines. They may be working it out on a train on the way to a concentration camp. So again, a very dark book at times, but sometimes a very funny book, and just a very human and a very living book. So I've been really, really loving this book so far. I'm just over halfway. So again, it might be another couple of weeks for me, but I'll see how Richard sort of what his pace is, and will sort of take as long as it takes. But it's really good so far, and I might try and organise my thoughts a little more after I've finished it. And then one of the books I've been making a fair bit of headway in, because this is sort of what I substitute for Life and Fate. It's one of the books I've been reading in dribs and drabs throughout the year, and that's the complete essays of Montaigne. And I mean, it's difficult to, because every month this year I just say I've been reading a little more Montaigne, and like what exactly can I say? I'm not really sure, other than that the more I read him, the more I like him, and he is just a lot of fun. and I'll see if I can find one that really stood out to me. Let's have a look, and just maybe read. Yeah, I'll read the beginning of an essay on books, since we're on BookTube. I think I read this essay at the end of last month and was going to include it in the last one, but just ran out of time. I was going on about too many things, so I'll read the first sort of paragraph of it, and then I'll read the end, because both I thought were quite interesting. So here's the beginning. I do not doubt that I often happen to talk of things which are treated better in the writings of master craftsmen, and with more authenticity. What you have here is purely an essay of my natural, not at all of my acquired, abilities. Anyone who catches me out in ignorance does me no harm. I cannot vouch to other people for my reasonings. I can scarcely vouch for them to myself, and am by no means satisfied with them. If anyone is looking for knowledge, let him go where such fish are to be caught. There is nothing I lay claim to less. These are my own thoughts, by which I am striving to make known no matter, by which I am striving to make known not matter but me. So to make himself known. Perhaps I shall master that matter one day, or perhaps I did not do, or perhaps I did do so once when fortune managed to bring me to places where light is thrown on it. But I no longer remember anything about that. I may be a man of fairly wide reading, but I retain nothing. And that obviously can't be the case. That's a kind of exaggerated sort of false modesty there, I think, because his essays are littered with quotations and references to other authors. I suppose he had the luxury of a great library, and he could just look up a certain writer whenever a little bell was ringing in the back of his head. However, I think the end of the essay, if I've remembered it correctly, will be helpful. Let's have a look. So towards the end of the essay he says, "To help my defective and treacherous memory a little, and it is so extremely bad that I have more than once happened to pick up again, thinking it a new and unknown to me, a book which I had carefully read several years earlier and scribbled all over with my notes. I have for some time now adopted the practice of adding at the end of each book, of each book I intend to read only once, the date when I finished reading it and the general judgment I drew from it, in order to show me again at least the general idea and impression I had conceived of its author when reading it. I would like to transcribe here some of those annotations," and then he gives a few paragraphs of annotations from books that he read only once and didn't think he would ever want to reread, and so he's just scribbled a summary of his thoughts, which I thought was really fascinating, in a kind of bookish, booktubey kind of way of just getting into the idiosyncrasies of another reader's reading, and I quite like that he, when he's reading a book, you can tell if he's going to want to read it again or not, and it's something I try to think of when I read something. I try to think of whether I'll be reading it anytime soon or in the next few years, and if not, then that might be a signal to get rid of it. So yeah, I just found that really interesting, and I've been loving reading Montaigne, and as he said in the first the first paragraph I read, that what he's really giving you isn't knowledge, it's not really philosophy, it's just his musings, his sort of random thoughts. He's picking a subject and just writing what comes to his head, and what you're really getting is a sort of intellectual portrait of Montaigne himself, and that there he is admitting it, that what he's giving you is him, not knowledge. But sometimes, almost by accident, you get knowledge. So it's the best of both worlds. Finally, the other book I'm dipping in and out of is the major works of William Wordsworth. So this includes a good selection of his poetry, of his sort of shorter poems, and then it includes the entirety of the Prelude, which is a long autobiographical poem that he wrote that was supposed to be, as the name implies, the prelude of a much longer poem. And so the Prelude is supposed to be how he formed his sensibilities, really. So it's going into his childhood and early adulthood, and he's examining it and turning it over. It's about sort of how he became a poet, in a way. And all that being said, I haven't read the Prelude yet. That's just from the biography of Wordsworth I read recently. I'm not too far away from it. I've got about about 70, 80 pages until I'm up to the Prelude. So my goal is to keep reading and to get to the first part of the Prelude before the end of the month. So that's my little challenge. I've got about a week to go, so we'll see. At the moment, I'm in a section that's got quite a lot of his sonnets, and he's not a poet I think of when I think of sonneteers. Think of Shakespeare or Elizabeth Barrett Browning or John Donne with his holy sonnets, or sort of any number of other poets that spring to mind. But he's got some great poets, and I knew he wrote sonnets before dipping into this, because his sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge is one of my favourite poems by him. But this is one, quite a political poem by him, called England, the time is come when thou shouldst wean. And I'll just read out the whole thing. England, the time is come when thou shouldst wean thy heart from its emasculating food. The truth should now be better understood. Old things have been unsettled. You have seen fair seed time, better harvest might have been but for thy trespasses. And at this day, if for Greece, Egypt, India, Africa, aught good were destined, thou wouldst step in between. England, all nations in this charge agree, but worse, more ignorant in love and hate, far, far more abject is thine enemy. Therefore the wise pray for thee, though the freight of thy offences be a heavy weight. O grief, the earth's best hopes rest all with thee. And I think there you're getting Wordsworth's, maybe it's sort of a hinge of his changing political views, his developing political views, where he'd been a very eager and enthusiastic supporter of the French Revolution. He sort of fraternised with, I can't remember the sort of what the sect was called, but it was the slightly more, slightly milder Jacobins, and then there was the sort of the Mountain with Robespierre, who were much more radical and saw these people who are still very, really quite radical and quite revolutionary, but just not to the degree that they were. And so they were seen as, as traitors or as reactionaries in the terror. And so Wordsworth was very much involved with all these people who were getting killed. And then Napoleon comes along, and I think this is what this poem is really getting at, is that he sees England as imperfect, as as a slave master, as a country that interferes in the affairs of other countries for its own gain, which will only be more the case after the Napoleonic Wars, really, I think. He's recognising all of that, and he's sort of seeing why so much of the world would see it as an enemy, and yet there's the greater enemy of Napoleon, and he sees England for all of its imperfections as being the kind of only hope. Well, you know, that seems to be how he's stacking things up in that sonnet, and I found it interesting. It to me it sounds like the seeds of Shelley or someone like that, that's slightly more radical romantics, and it's interesting that I was sort of seeing that in a sonnet that was maybe a seed of Wordsworth's more reactionary politics, which I don't try to be too down on. You know, the elder romantics for their reactionary politics. I think the times they lived through were certainly enough to sort of make that change in their worldview. So yeah, anyway, that's a bit of my rambling on what I've been reading, and yeah, hopefully I'll get a fair bit of progress done with those books before the end of the month. But we'll check in then, and I'll let you know what I've been up to and what I'm planning to read in July. So for now, thank you very much for watching. Hope you've been reading lots of good stuff, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.